guys, how's it going? And welcome back. So, why is your guitar not staying in tune for you? Well, if you check out a video of mine about the Kramer VT211S, you will see that I show you the tuners that are on there. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a 3-3 headstock or inline 6. Doesn't matter if it's left-handed or right-handed. Doesn't matter if it's an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar. If it has that style of tuners, that is key number one, why it won't stay in tune. That's a big reason why it won't stay in tune, because those tuners can't hold nothing, okay? Now, if you have at least this style of a tuner, whether it's a 3-3 or inline 6, okay, and even on Epiphone guitars, they come with the Clusen style tuners. Those tuners are actually quite good, okay? Even though you can buy them for like 25 bucks, right? Like brand new at the music store, brand named at that, right? 25, 30, 40 bucks, right? So, it's not always the tuners, but if you have the style of tuners, like I said, whether it's a 3-3 headstock, acoustic electric, or an inline 6, and it has that style of crummy tuners, because we've got to watch our P's and Q's on YouTube, okay? If you have that style, then that is a big problem. So you could be tuning your guitar the correct way, but those tuners are still a huge problem on guitars, okay? So you need to ditch those tuners and upgrade it to something better. However, just keep in mind that you may have to bore out the holes in your headstock to 10 millimeter, okay, in order to fit a newer style tuner in, because those tuners tend to not be held in with a nut and washer. They're usually just a straight a ferrule type of bushing, and there's like a couple screws underneath, and that's all that holds the tuner in. So that means you're going to need a reaming set, okay, or even if it's just the reaming tool, like a tapered reamer. Just make sure you measure it with a micrometer, find the 10 millimeter spot, and then tape it off with electrical tape so you don't go too deep, because you got to get both ends at 10 millimeters so that it goes all the way through. But I actually start out with a tapered reamer, and I move to a straight reamer once I can get my hole opened up a little bit to fit the 10 in there properly, because they're usually about 8 or 9 millimeter holes in those kind of guitars. Even some of the really old guitars were like 8 millimeter, so it's like you got to open them up a little bit to bore them out to 10. And I've done a lot of these guitars that way, because I've bought a few SGs that have just Clusen tuners, which didn't have a nut and washer system, which meant that they were likely going to be like at least a 9 millimeter hole or an 8. Depends on the model year of the SG. And I've bored those out, and I've got videos about that as well on my channel, so you can see kind of what you need and how it's done. But if you don't have to go through that headache, great. Fine. But one of the biggest problems with tuning stability issues is not always to blame the intonation of your saddles on your electric guitar. You can't always blame the nut, because the nut's not always the problem, okay? You can't blame the style of guitar, whether it's a Gibson, a real Gibson, or whether it's an Epiphone, because Epiphones do have better tuning stability than Gibsons. First and foremost, Epiphone guitars, the strings are much closer in, so they are better already. You don't need a Band-Aid like a string butler, or nut sauce, or all kinds of lead crap in there, whatever lube you want to use, Gorilla Snot, all these other weird chemical names. You definitely have to make sure your intonation is good, yes. So if your intonation is good anyways, then you can eliminate your intonation. The nut, well, you can't do much other than sometimes you can recut a nut or get a custom nut made on a guitar if necessary, but that's not always the problem either. It's usually just the tuners are very poor quality. But you're not going to get poor quality tuners on a more expensive Epiphone or even a Gibson guitar. You're definitely not getting poor quality stuff on Gibsons, right? Of course, some people will want to argue certain models, and that's fine too. I mean, hey, not every Gibson is a good Gibson. Not every Epiphone is a good Epiphone. Not every Squier is a good Squier. Not every Fender, period, is a good Fender. But, I mean, this one's actually not too bad. I kind of like this one, especially now I got Elixir strings on it. It's like plays like $1 million, sounds great, loving it. But old strings, definitely if your strings are really old, they're not going to hold tune very well. But I think the biggest problem that I always run across, and after over 30 years now of teaching people, the common mistakes my students make, and I have to correct them a lot on it until it finally sinks in, is to always tune up to pitch. So what happens is, I'm sitting there with the student and they're tuning their guitar, and next thing you know, they go over the center mark and they just tune it down to pitch. And I'm like, keep going, baby. Little lower and bring her up to pitch. Well, why? Well, because when you are tuning down, you are creating slack, okay? And even if these are really good tuners, which these aren't bad, you can buy probably these exact same tuners on Amazon for about 25 bucks. They're decent tuners. They hold their tune extremely well, but only like any other tuner if you tune up to pitch. There's only probably a very small handful. I could probably count them on one hand, maybe a hand and a half, but they're going to be extremely mother-loading expensive tuners with super high turn ratios on them, which takes forever to tune. Imagine winding the string on an 80-to-1 ratio, but you know what? That is the most solid tuning you could ever get, other than, like 100-to-1. Seriously, there are some very high turning ratio tuners, and the higher the ratio, the better they hold, yes, but they're only going to hold so well. I mean, the rest of your guitar has to be in good shape too, right? Which is a given. But the big thing here that we want to talk about is the fact that 99% of the time, your tuning problems, why your guitar doesn't stay in tune, it's usually not the guitar. It's mostly not even the tuners, unless you have those cheap garbagey ones, okay? But if you have even at least these, even a $12 set of these, okay, they will hold their tune, okay, if you tune up to pitch. But you gotta always make small movements when you're tuning up to pitch with your guitar. And you also have to be doing something else. You don't just sit here and pluck the string and then just keep turning until it looks like it's in tune. That's also a big rookie mistake that a lot of guitar players make, and then they wonder why their guitar isn't holding tune. They think there's something wrong with the guitar. It's not the guitar, it's the friggin' person. The thing is, if you're going to sit here and you're going to tune your guitar, see if I can get this to point at you guys. Okay, now we're on a little bit, okay? It's kind of trying to bounce a bit, right? So what I'm going to do is just a small little movement. Then I'm going to hit it again. But when you're out, like this is bad, okay? This is like, that's been sitting for a few months kind of thing, right? So we want to tune up to pitch. What we want to do is keep plucking the string constantly. Don't stop. And just keep making small movements. When you're getting that close, that's about where you want to stop. And then you want to let that rest. Hit it. Now that's holding for quite a long time. You're in tune. That's stable, okay? So you want to do that for every string, okay? But if you're just going to flick it and try and tune up, like a lot of my students seem to like to do, it ain't going to work for you. You're going to follow the tune like that. No matter how good your tuners are. You could have those really high-end boutique tuners and still suck because you didn't tune correctly. You always have to tune up to pitch. And if you go over, you bring it down, and then you start over, and you bring it back up again. And that's how you tune your guitar. So unless you have those pathetic tuners, whether it's a 3-3, inline 6, 4-2, whatever, okay, that look like the ones that are on the VT211S Kramer that I had, which I have on YouTube. I have actually, I think, an Epiphone too that had the same kind of tuners, and we upgraded those as well. I think it was one of those, I think it was the Epiphone Les Paul Special that I had. It was a left-handed one. Great guitar too. Kind of miss it a little bit some days. I miss some of my guitars that I've had, but you know what, I think about it and it's kind of like, well, what I have now it's kind of like getting to the point where A, I'm getting older, but B, I also don't want to have a gazillion guitars that are just doing nothing. I just want to have guitars I know I'm going to play. And so all my acoustics, except for this one, I play all the time, especially in church, except for my right-handed GS Mini. I only play that at home right now until I get good enough at right-handed. But my other three tailors, I rotate them. So every week I take in a different tailor. And then this thing I don't bring in because it has no electronics in it, and I don't want to mic up this thing anyways. I bought this as a beater guitar for campfire and play outside in the summer, because I'm never bringing my tailor outside in the hot summer. Humidity and stuff and wrecking my tailors. So, that's why you buy junker guitars for that purpose that you don't care about, because when the top warps out and it's a piece of junk, I'm going to throw it in the fire pit eventually and let it burn and give it a good death. Then I'll just go buy another cheap one because it was under $300, so I don't care, You got to have a guitar or two in your collection that are like that. And this way you don't worry about it. But these tuners are fantastic for holding tune. And you should be changing your strings depending on the strings you use. It could be once every couple months, could be every couple of weeks. It depends on how much acid content you have in your fingers too. Some people have high acidic content and they're changing their strings like every day, which is pretty expensive because they just literally rot the strings off the guitar. They're so high of acid content. But the majority of us out there, we should only be doing our strings probably, I don't know, once every month, couple months, maybe twice a year, once a year, depends on the strings. I have virtually no acid content in my hands, which is kind of weird because I have acid reflux as a medical issue. It's like, so I take pills for that. But, but yet I don't have a lot of acid under my fingers. So I use Elixir NanoWeb phosphorus coated bronze strings on all my acoustics, including this one, because I thought I'd try them on this, and they're fantastic. And so I'll change these strings even on my tailors once a year, whether they need it or not, and yet these tailors get played every single week at church, because I rotate them, right? And they get played, as many times in a week as I can during the week. I'll play each one of them, no big deal. So they all get playtime every week, no matter what. And then I've got my electrics and so on, right? And I'm even using the Elixirs now for the electric version on my Gibson, and they're fantastic on the Gibson, But that's to my liking, though. I can tell you, hey, these are fantastic. You gotta buy them. But you know what? Really, it works for me. You can try them. I would recommend trying them, and see if you like them too, right? Because you never know, right? You never know. I still use the Dario strings on my Strat, my Tele, my Kramer Pacer Classic. I just use regular everyday Dario cheap strings on it. They're like 942s on all three guitars, right? I thought about running 10s on the Kramer, but then it's kind of like, well, I can. At least I don't have to worry about modifying the nut because it's a Floyd Rose system. But I like the 10s on the Les Paul, but on the Kramer, I prefer the 9s. They're just I like them better anyways. That's just me. But some people prefer 10s on the Kramer Pacers. But anyway, so that's pretty much about what I got for you. So if you are having tuning issues, the first thing I would look after is maybe a new set of strings might help, because maybe your strings are too old. That definitely attributes to bad tuning. But I would check first. The first and foremost thing I would check is your habit of how you tune your guitar. Constantly pluck the string and tune up to your note. And if you do go over, tune it back down under it, then back up again. And if you haven't been doing that, that's probably your problem right there. Okay? Other tuning issues that can happen for your guitar falling out of tune is the death grip. Some people squeeze way too hard on the neck, and that bends the strings out of pitch and knocks them out of tune, okay? Which means you're going to be constantly retuning no matter what good habit you have for tuning properly. You're using a death grip, which is too much, because even with, even vintage thin frets, you can still push them down enough that they will play up in pitch, and you are out of tune, okay? Which is why you need a light touch, period. It also saves your frets from, premature wear and tear a lot. I know I used to be a bad death gripper. Now I'm kind of a mostly light person, but sometimes I can get a little carried away and get a little more aggressive. And I know when that's happening because I can hear when my guitar actually falls out, and I'm like, ooh, you know, and I was like, better back off a little bit. So retune and start over. So I've learned a lot over the years myself with my own habits. So just trying to save you guys from some bad habits. Don't develop them because they really suck to try and break out of them. But check how you tune first. And as long as you're doing that right, then I would look at other things like how bad are you gripping the neck? Is your intonation on your electric guitar set right? What about your acoustic guitar? I mean, you can't really do a whole lot. You really should be taking that to a lutherie to have them check out your intonation. Maybe your intonation is out. It happens even on real brand new guitars that are really expensive. They can have bad intonation issues, you know. I mean, sometimes a bad batch gets out or a bad guitar or two can get off the assembly line, you know. So, I mean, that's something else to look at as well. But there are many factors involved. The nut, you know, could be an issue as well on your guitar. Maybe your nut's grabbing. Who knows? And there's ways to fix all that stuff. You know, some of them you can just do yourself, a little piece of sandpaper or whatever. You know, or if you've got needlepoint files, you can fix the nut slots, but be very careful because there's no going back. Once you start carving in, you will have to replace your nut if you screw up. So if you don't feel confident, take it to a tech to have done. Get it done right. But other than that, I think that pretty much covers our tuning issues and things to look for, maybe things you may have to replace. It's kind of up to you at that point, but figure it out. But these are my ideas to help you guys out to figure out why you may be having some tuning issues with your guitars. Okay, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll definitely catch you on the next one. See ya.